If you are looking forward to the Dustin Poirier vs Conor McGregor fight, then be sure to show this by smashing the like button.
Thank you all for the support. I appreciate it greatly. I am back. I am back to who I am. This is the beginning of my 2020 season.
Thank you for joining me once again here on Keating K TV. In today's video, we will be going over the Dustin Poirier vs Conor McGregor rematch fight on the 23rd of January. However, more specifically in this installment, we will be going over why Conor McGregor will be able to defeat the Diamond Dustin Poirier. I will also be making another video where I talk about Poirier defeating Conor McGregor, so be sure to stay notified by subscribing to my channel with the bell notification turned on. And now with that being said, let's jump right into the video. This fight between Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier is a fight in which we will see who has improved the most compared to the first time they have fought. We can make a strong argument why each fighter has become better than the other. However, in my opinion though, accomplishments are what still holds the most value. And looking at what both fighters have been able to accomplish has been nothing short but spectacular. Looking over at Dustin Poirier, he, along the way, has been able to capture interim UFC gold against a champion of the division he lost to Conor McGregor in, Max Blessed Holloway, in a fight in which he just showed that he was right there amongst the elite of the sport. And between all of those victories, it was only time that he would fight the champion Khabib Nurmagomedov. And in that fight, unfortunately for Dustin Poirier, he did not perform very well. To sum it all up, he merely was unable to come up and show up come fight night and get his own will going against the champion. And that's where we stand right now. Looking over to Conor McGregor. After defeating Dustin Poirier, he went on a very terrific streak, defeating fighters like Chad Mendes for the interim featherweight championship, unifying the belt by knocking out then undefeated king Jose Aldo, and then avenging his upset loss to Nate Diaz, and then quickly going ahead and capturing the 205 lightweight championship of the world. Becoming the first double champion in the history of the sport, Conor McGregor, out of the two, has clearly shown that he has the more prestigious accolades and the better accomplishments since that fight. Out of the two, you can say that Conor McGregor had the better performance, going 4 rounds with Khabib Nurmagomedov, stuffing 4 out of his 7 takedowns, winning a round against him. In summary, he clearly did better, but that doesn't really mean much if you take a look at the entirety of the fight. Khabib was still able to show how much better he was than both of McGregor and Poirier. However though, if you were to ask me who has become a better fighter ever since their first fight, I will have to say that Conor McGregor is a fighter who has improved more, experienced a little bit more, and has learned a lot more along the way. Oftentimes, we kind of get carried away in a movie-like script where we always think that the once lost underdog has gotten way better than the guy who beat him, and the guy who beat him just slacked off and just got caught at the point of his career where he stopped improving. The reality of this fight is much different and is just completely nothing like what you would see in a movie. Now, in what areas has Conor McGregor improved in? Let's talk about that. To begin with, ever since that fight, obviously he has beaten a champion in Jose Aldo's spectacular fashion, then has moved up to a way bigger division at the 170-pound division, 2 divisions above where he was competing at that time, and he had a very difficult loss to deal with against Nate Diaz. In a fight he was dominating, yes, but sometimes when you are the better fighter, it doesn't necessarily mean that you will be winning that said fight. And so he learned something about himself that had to apply throughout the entirety of his career. Never underestimate an opponent that you are facing, especially when you are moving up and fighting bigger fighters. The methods he had used at featherweight were now insufficient at a way higher weight class, and so he had to adapt himself, taking away the excess of movement that he had utilized back then, and become a little bit more sturdy on his feet, a little bit more dominant in his presence. And so against Nate Diaz in the rematch, he was way better prepared. But now, let's just not say that the only lesson he learned was at the higher divisions. Even at featherweight, when he fought Chad Mendes, he had a very difficult fight in which obviously he had a torn ACL, but he knew how to work around it, and beating a strong wrestler like him for a championship obviously carried a lot of experience with him and a lot of lessons that he learned. For example, knowing that Mendes was not on a full training camp, he knew that going to the body early on would be the key in tiring him out, and so he did. And through all the hardships that he had to face in that fight, coming out of it on top obviously carried a lot of experience with it. And then we had his beautiful performance against Eddie Alvarez, in which, in my opinion, all the lessons that he learned previously just came into play in just completely decimating a fighter like Eddie Alvarez. Now, mind you, Poirier and Alvarez have also fought. However, it wasn't as easy for Poirier as it was for Conor McGregor. Not to say that he was in complete and utter danger all the time, no. Poirier did very well in that fight as well, and he just beat him to the punch every single time also. But it wasn't as spectacular as the Conor McGregor performance. And then Conor McGregor goes in there and fights pound for pound boxing king Floyd Money Mayweather, and just that sheer experience alone with such a spectacular fighter is just something that Conor McGregor obviously had to learn a lot from. I would presume that what we saw after that fight from Conor was just a very big dedication on working on efficiency with the striking, working on a lot more round punches, being a lot more strong on the right hand side as well instead of the left hand side, and just working a little bit more on strong come forward methods. As an example, you saw him train a lot more heavy on his feet, higher guard, a lot more head movement in the pocket. And so he definitely improved on the boxing side of things as well. And then he goes in there and fights Khabib Nurmagomedov in a fight in which I would say Conor McGregor was not approaching the fight correctly, and he wasn't able to showcase what he should have showcased a lot better. That can also be attributed to his preparation. But aside from that, the biggest lesson he learned from that was just to be on point every single time. Just because you are Conor McGregor, double-weight world champion, does not mean that you'll be untouched forever. And Khabib Nurmagomedov definitely displayed that in their fight. And then his next fight came along against Cerrone, and we saw Conor McGregor come in very strong at the 170-pound division. He filled the weight perfectly, he was in tremendous shape, bulked up correctly, and he fought just brilliantly. He came out right at the gate. He was not really caught up in this hype around trying to preserve himself and do this and that. He knew who he was, he knew where he had to change in, and he knew where he had to adapt in. But he never forgot who he was. And so, from the opening of the bell, boom, comes out of the gate with all the fury in the world and completely just gets rid of a fighter like Cerrone in only 40 seconds, which is just ridiculous. I mean, nobody has ever done that to Cowboy Don Cerrone. And now here we stand. Conor McGregor learned lessons about energy efficiency, boxing, his kicking, his fighting tempo, everything that Conor McGregor had to improve in, he improved in. And now when I take a look at Dustin Poirier on the other hand, he has become a lot more well-rounded in the sense of being able to go 5 rounds, fight as a champion, and fight as a veteran who knows what he's doing and who knows what he is himself. Whereas Conor McGregor had to adapt his style here and there, change a few things around, and go from a light, bouncy featherweight to a strong, sturdy welterweight essentially. We didn't really see that from Dustin Poirier. He always knew what his fundamentals were, and he just worked around it and built his game around that. So even though Dustin Poirier has improved on what he is as well, I think Conor McGregor just improved that much more. However, there is one area in which Conor McGregor is not outshining Poirier in, which I will talk about in the next video where I talk about Poirier winning. But now let's go ahead and break this fight down on why Conor McGregor can win. The core of this fight will be very similar to what the first fight was, in the sense of both southpaw fighters will be colliding with one another, and they haven't really fought a lot of southpaws themselves. Ever since that fight, Dustin Poirier fought Michael Johnson, who was a southpaw, but he ended up getting clipped in that fight. Conor McGregor fought Nate Diaz twice, so he's gotten a little bit more rounds in against a fellow southpaw since their last fight. However though, if we take a look back at the first fight, we will immediately see that Conor McGregor came out of the gate immediately and just did not let Dustin Poirier warm up to the fight. Dustin Poirier is one of those fighters that likes to get better with each round. He kind of tends to get better at timing you, getting a read on you, and he doesn't really like to just get immediately into a dogfight right out of the gate. Conor McGregor, on the other hand, he's right there to get you out of it as soon as the bell rings, and that is the biggest difference in fighting philosophy between the two. And that is why in the first fight you saw Conor McGregor opening up with a big hook kick, which is very random. So obviously a fighter like Dustin Poirier had to kind of take himself back and think, whoa, what was that strike, right? So obviously immediately Conor McGregor put that mental pressure in him and the physical pressure as well, obviously with the great range of arsenals that he displayed in that bout. Conor McGregor immediately put the pressure on him and made him very, very defensive. Poirier is a fighter who doesn't necessarily like to be backed up all the time, compared to essentially what he was back then to what he is today. Today he deals with pressure way better, as he has shown in the fight against Dan Hooker and Justin Gaethje. At that time, he was pretty much caught cold, and so Conor McGregor opens up with his punches as well. His straight punches were not connecting, mainly due to the fact that the way they were standing, both southpaws, so their stances were kind of crossing each other's, and usually when Conor fights a common opponent, they tend to be orthodox as well, so that straight punch has a way more open trajectory and it's just a lot more clear. Against Dustin Poirier, there was just a lot more shoulder in the way, a lot more guarding in the way, so he had to work around that. So he started to open up with a little bit more hooks as well, and that is where you saw the power of Conor McGregor come in, the accuracy of Conor McGregor come in, and the mental warfare of Conor McGregor come in, because at that moment you started talking to him as well, freezing him mentally, putting that stress on him, and in that moment Dustin Poirier was just stifled. Too much skill, too much confidence, and too much aggression. Dustin Poirier in the fight was just simply cornered and knocked out. Now, if you're gonna ask me, will the same thing happen? I can comfortably say no. Ever since that fight, Poirier has had his own ups and downs, had his own trials and tribulations, and the fact that he even lost to Conor McGregor in the first fight is just a little bit more experience and a little bit more confidence in himself to deal with that situation well once again. Now, I also believe that going into this fight, the two will not hate each other like they did back then. There will not be that hostility, that toxicity between the two, and that urge of not wanting to lose is not going to be that high. So I believe both fighters will be a little bit more calm in there, and thus it will definitely benefit Dustin Poirier in that sense. However though, taking away that part of that fact, we also have to realize the other side of this coin, which is as soon as Conor McGregor comes out of the gate once again and starts to get his work in, put the pressure on Dustin Poirier, I believe that he will start to see what happened in the first fight again. He will start to have some flashbacks again, and I believe that in the mind of Dustin Poirier, he will probably start thinking of what happened last time and how he wants to prevent it at all costs. And so he will kind of start to process a little bit more, and as a result, somewhat the same thing will happen from the first fight in the second fight, where he was kind of stifled again. Now, I don't think he will be stifled as bad as he did back then, but I believe ultimately that mental warfare will still be there. So we cannot really rule it out just because they're friendly with each other now, because in that fight, when that cage closes, there won't be any friends in there. Stylistically, I can break down a few scenarios which I believe will have a great impact come fight night, and let's start with the opening of the fight. As soon as the fight opens up, I want you to keep in mind that probably Conor McGregor will have the speed advantage yet again in this matchup. However though, additionally in this matchup, I believe that Conor McGregor will implement his leg kicks once again, since obviously both are southpaw. That opens up the back leg kick to the lead leg of Dustin Poirier like it did against Nate Diaz. And aside from that, you also have to realize that Conor McGregor will probably have the better jab and the better offense in making Dustin Poirier back up. So he has two immediate techniques he will utilize. Press Dustin Poirier back a little bit, pop your jab, and then start to set in some of those leg kicks. And from that, you will immediately see that he will have the advantage in controlling the fight. And with Conor McGregor, when he's controlling the fight, he's also pressuring you in a manner at which you're never really comfortable. Because for Dustin Poirier, at least in this matchup, he's not fighting somebody like Dan Hooker, who is slower than him, has worse cardio than him, has not that much power. So he can kind of put himself up against the fence and roll with the strikes and be a little bit more comfortable on the back foot. Against McGregor, you're not that privileged, so there will be a lot more immediate fighting back from Dustin Poirier. Now, out of the two fighters, Conor McGregor has the better head movement, so when it does come to a point where they're exchanging punches, Conor McGregor will obviously be the better fighter at baiting out the reaction because he's that aggressive, and he will probably have Dustin Poirier shoot out a panic jab or whatever it may be, and he will start to slip those as well. I don't know to what degree he can slip him and I counter him with, because at the end of the day, this is not Nate Diaz, because Dustin Poirier is a lot more defensively responsible, he's a little bit more quicker, and he's a little bit more smart than Nate Diaz, so he's not gonna have a way slower Nate Diaz that he can counter all day, every day. So the counter punch windows and the slips and the pullback counters will not be as effective as they were against Diaz, against Poirier. Nonetheless, however, they will still be working to a certain point, and from there we can always remember the fact that Conor McGregor has just way better range than Dustin Poirier, so he will utilize those teep kicks to the body, those head kicks, maybe he's gonna bring back a spinning kick, whatever it may be. He will definitely be the fighter who will zone out the opponent. Conor McGregor will just come forward and zone out Dustin Poirier to a point where he does not have that boxing range like he did not have in the first fight, and as a result, I believe that desperation will set in, frustration will set in, and Conor McGregor's sheer power and strength development since the first fight will show itself, because Conor will be a way stronger fighter physically, and I believe he will carry a little bit more power as well, so everything will weigh a little bit more in that fight. So ultimately, whenever Conor McGregor is in control, I don't think cardio would become a problem as well, because if he is in control of the fight, he's in control of the tempo, and he can pretty much fight at the pace he wants to fight at. And I don't think Dustin Poirier can implement a game plan or a fight strategy where he's just absorbing all of the shots that Nate Diaz was and just smothering everything and making Conor McGregor tired out and just make him punch himself out. I don't think that's the case, and I don't believe that will happen. So in terms of cardio, I think Conor McGregor will just be fine. And in the end, I believe this fight will probably be one round or two, in which if Conor McGregor were to win, like I broke down in this video, it will most likely be by a TKO victory. Also, remember the fact that ever since that fight with Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier has been in a lot of fights. He has gotten knocked out against Michael Johnson. He has been in a big war against Dan Hooker and Max Holloway. So all of these fights really have put a lot of wear and tear on the body of Dustin Poirier. And so I would have to believe that come fight night, Conor McGregor will be the fresher fighter and he will be a little bit more of the durable fighter. So that is what I believe are the advantages of Conor McGregor come fight night. However though, ultimately, in the end, it is only time that will tell the truth. For now, this was why Conor McGregor beats the Diamond Dustin Poirier on the 23rd of January 2021. Leave in the comment section down below who you think will win come fight night. And as always, I have been Keenan from Keenan KTV, signing off. Later.